It started around, I say, 11 p.m., which would be the 19th, September 2005. Just to give a little backstory, I was pregnant full term with a son. I knew what I was having, and pretty much that's how it kind of started. So throughout the pregnancy, I had no type of problems. Wasn't high risk or anything like that. Healthy pregnancy. Ate what I was supposed to. Didn't gain weight. Gained maybe about 20 pounds in the whole pregnancy. I was very careful that didn't want to have get gestational diabetes or anything like that. So I was very careful. It was my first child. Me and my husband was expecting our first kid. He was supposed to be born on September 21st, 2005. So on 9/19, around 11 p.m., each night around between 11 and 12 at night, I would feel like motion. And as I got further along in my pregnancy, I would feel him moving around at that time. On this particular night, though, it was very calm and still. I didn't think anything of it at the time because, I thought, you heard people say, sometimes the baby stop moving as much when it gets close to you about to have the baby. And since I was a day out from my delivery date, I just assumed that, the baby's probably going to come tonight. So I laid down and went to sleep. I noticed that I wasn't feeling any motion, but again, at the time, I didn't think nothing of it. So I went to sleep, slept until about maybe 7 a.m. I woke up, still wasn't feeling no movement. Usually I would feel like, you get used to feeling the movement after carrying a kid for almost 9 months. You can really feel the movement. But I wasn't feeling anything. My husband wasn't home from work. So I waited for like maybe an hour. I wasn't feeling no movement. Then I started to get a little nervous, but still not panicky at the moment. I called my husband. I told him, I said, look, I'm not getting any movement. I'm not feeling the baby move. I think something might be wrong. At that point, he left from his job early, came and picked me up. We went to the doctor's office. I arrived at the doctor's office. Once I got there, they did their regular routine. They didn't feel the heartbeat. They didn't hear the heartbeat. So for whatever reason, it was still kind of like foggy to me at the time. Maybe the only thing I could think of, I was maybe in denial at the time. But for whatever reason, it hadn't clicked in my head that what was happening. So they continued to check me, but at that point, my doctor said, look, you need to go to the hospital. We're sending you over to the hospital to get on a different machine just to be sure what we see is, what we really seeing is, what we're getting is what's really happening. So we immediately left out, said goodbye to everybody, rushed over to the hospital, got to the hospital. Now, at this point, I was already at my weekly appointment, so I was going to my weekly appointment, seeing the ultrasound. So I was used to seeing the people each week. I said hi to everybody like I usually do. So I go in, and the doctor, he comes in, he checks me, he leaves out, then he comes back in. So when he comes back in, that's when he tells me. But when he comes in, he's very upset. And really upset. So then that made me even nervous. And he said, sorry to inform you that, you lost your kid. We're not getting a heartbeat. We think the baby has passed away. So at this point, my husband is like, you know what? let me step out the room so I can, call our parents and start letting people know, what's going on. As I'm sitting there, the doctor starts crying, and at this point, I'm still calm. Each time they check my blood pressure is normal, like it's not elevated or anything. I'm really still just calm. I felt like I wasn't even absorbing it, I guess, at the time. I wasn't taking it in really at all. To be honest, I was kind of like in shock in some way. So I was still so very calm, and the doctors is looking at me strange, like, your blood pressure is not even elevated. And I'm like, so I'm sitting there. At this point, I don't have no type of emotion at the moment because I'm still kind of like processing in my head. I see my husband leave, and he's saying, they already told me that my son passed away. At this point, we had already named him. His name was Logan Alexander. And so at this point, I'm just sitting there kind of like waiting. Not sure what I actually was waiting for, but maybe for them to tell me something different. That's the only thing I could think of. Actually, it took me a long time to be able to really even think about putting this on a video because, I mean, it's sad. Who wants to really tell such a sad story? And then sometimes, without understanding like what grief really is and the process of it, you go through different phases of it. So it takes time to, as people would say, peel back the layers of emotion that you have. For me at first, so when my husband comes back in, he's looking upset. At this point, the doctor's crying, so then I'm getting upset. So I'm starting to cry, and my husband comes in, and he just looks so sad. And the sadness that he had on his face, it really made me more, really upset me. Not so much of I felt sad for him. I'll say that. So at that point, I am accepting it. So they sent me to actually, I think that might have happened first. They sent me to a room first. Either way, somehow I ended up in a room where it was a very young lady that was there. She looked like she probably was new. They needed to get an ultrasound. So I'm not sure if they informed the people what was going on or what happened, but she went to check. She didn't see the heartbeat or see no motion. And I could see on her face that she was getting upset. So she was like, I feel like I'm not getting, I'm not getting the heartbeat because I'm not pressing hard enough. I mean, this went on for about a good probably 5 minutes. I mean, she's like really pressing on my stomach to the point where it's starting to kind of hurt because I felt that she just didn't want to accept what she was actually saying, or maybe she couldn't believe it. Maybe it was her first time. I wasn't sure. But at some point, my husband just said, look, you hurting her. I think you should stop. So she is an ultrasound technician. So she wasn't able to tell me any information. So we had to wait for the doctor. For whatever reason, this was like the busiest day in the hospital probably ever. We probably got there around maybe 9 something in the morning. And we was there mostly all the entire day. So what happened was I had to wait because it just kept being emergencies happening before they could even get to me. So finally the doctor comes in and they gave the official word that I had lost my son, and that I had to have labor. I had to have the baby. I had to have a funeral because they said the age that he was, because he was full-term pregnancy, that I had to have a funeral. So I'm ingesting like all this. It's just like so much information. But they let me know that, they're going to put me in a room, just relax, and I'll be in there until they can get, one, for my doctors to get there, and then for them to get me in. Because, of course, just like anything else, pregnancies were already scheduled for that day. So it was like they had to basically fit me in somewhere. So, I mean, this went on like the entire day. Family started to come around. family started to be there, and I kind of was like really quiet for most of the time. I was kind of trying to really just like wrap my head around the fact that I had lost my kid, right? So I was just kind of like just sitting there. So, you have family there, people are praying, singing, and all different things, and trying to talk to me, ask me how I feel. Some people are saying nothing. Some people are just, upset. So we kind of like went through that. So then we had to make a decision if I wanted to have a vaginal birth. So now, mind you, I lost my kid. They want me to have a vaginal birth because it was, no reason for a C-section, actually, because it was an emergency. It wasn't no kind of danger towards, in fear of me. So for him to, have a C-section. So they were asking if he wanted a vaginal birth. And after thinking about it, I decided with my husband that was not what I wanted. I really honestly could not even hear a lot of the stuff that they were saying because my mind was just so all over the place. I was all over the place because in my mind I was just trying to understand, and then you start tracing back things in your mind. Did I do something wrong? Did something happen? Oh, last night when I felt it, I should have got up then. All kind of things, and regret. Well, I wouldn't say regret. I would say I felt I felt embarrassed because now I have to tell everybody that we had all these plans. Literally, we had planned so much stuff. We had already had a baby shower. The room was done, complete with everything in it. A lot of times people say, you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared. We were like overly prepared. I mean, everything was in the baby room except the baby, from the mobile, the crib, Pampers, everything you could think of, clothes from size 0 to 28 months or beyond. I mean, the whole closet is like racks where we had like the organizer with the clothes. Everything is in there. I mean, in this closet, filled, ready for this kid, from teddy bears to bottles to everything you could think of. We already had swing, everything. We knew it was a boy. We already had his name. So we were like just all the way ready and set for this kid. At this point, we had been married for some years at this time, around 4 or 5 years. So we were pretty much prepared and ready to have the kid. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So, mind you, while in the hospital, I decided to have a C-section. So that meant that I stayed in the hospital for about 4 days. That was the craziest 4 days in my life. Let me tell you. The first day, I had to have a surgery, which is C-section, which that went fine. But I was more anticipating days to come, like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? So what they do in a hospital, they usually send a counselor to you, but the counselor, she actually didn't come until the next day. So on that day was mostly family and everybody around. What the hospital did was they actually took a picture of the baby. And of course, it is a full baby. So they wrapped the baby up with the little head and a little blanket. Excuse me. And a little hat, little blanket and all of that. And they let me know that they would take the pictures of the baby. And if I wanted them, they would give them to me. But if I did not, they would put them in a file. They would never discard them. If 20 years from now, I wanted to come back, I was able to come back and get the pictures. And they said some people do, some people don't. But they give people the option because sometimes people say no on that day. But then later, they want it. Right? So they took a picture. They actually let us actually see the baby. They actually brung him out, and I could see him, and it's like nothing more. It's nothing more, I would say, disturbing or heartbreaking is to see a person without life. So basically, the first day of ever seeing my kid was really technically the last day. So, I mean, with that being said, that was like, you know, that was kind of hard because after waiting, for somebody who had a pregnancy and you carry a kid for 9 months, that's like months and months of waiting, imagining how your kid look and all that kind of stuff. And then to your first time seeing your kid is seeing your kid not alive. So that was a lot to take in within itself. So after everybody goes, and it's just like anything else, once everybody leaves, and a lot of family came around and supported and was there, and that helped for the most part. But the nighttime was the hardest time in the hospital. So the first night, of course, you can barely sleep. Me and my husband, he stayed there with me the entire time, all the days. He probably went home just to take a shower, and somebody was there until he came back for those days. So the first night, I'm like laying there, and he kind of like drifted off to sleep, and I kind of woke up by myself, and I'm just kind of awake, just laying in the bed, because of course, again, I had a C-section, so I, still was recovering. So I woke up and I heard a baby crying. So in my mind, I'm thinking, why am I hearing a baby cry? Am I going crazy? But it was strange because I never heard my kid cry. So in my head, I'm like, maybe I'm tripping, and I'm thinking that I can hear my kid crying, and it's in my mind. So I kind of like go ahead back to sleep, but I can't really get to sleep. So throughout the night, I wake up, but then I'm still crying and crying. And I mean, it was like just days and days of crying, just crying and crying, to the point where it just felt like it was no more tears left. Like, that's how much just feeling sad and crying. In the beginning, I just felt extremely sad. I was sad. I was disappointed. I felt like I had let everybody down, because this was like the first kid on both sides of the family, for the grandparents and everybody. And I just had a really strong, like, feeling of sadness. And I guess just so disappointed, But I felt like I really did feel that I just let everybody down, because what we waited for and talked about for months. Like, we had planned out his first birthday. So, stuff into detail. And to know that none of that stuff would ever happen was like truly devastating to me. I felt. So the days go by. The next day, we have to meet with the counselor, and she talks to us and try to, tell us that we can get help and we can go to classes and things like that. And what I felt like is the counselor, she was just really, really upset about it. Like, she comes in, she looks like she's been crying all night, and she's like, I really don't know what to say. I've been trying to figure out the words to say, but I just don't have any words to say. And she kind of like, after we like sitting there and consoling her, like, oh, it's gonna be fine, it's okay, it's okay, she tells us, when things like this happen, sometimes people don't know what to say. Some people avoid you. Some people don't say anything. And some people say stuff that's not always that always makes sense to the situation. So expect those things. And she said something to me that I remembered, and it just stuck with me. She said, it can be 5 years from now, and there's going to be somebody who remembered that you were pregnant, but maybe you didn't see them in 5 years, and they're going to ask you, oh, how was your baby? How's the baby? The last time I saw you was pregnant. And it's like that, when she told me that was like my worst fear, because everybody around you, even down to like your neighbors, they see you every day, and they knew you was pregnant, so it was just a matter of time before you had the kid. The strange thing about that is my kid passed away and would have been born on September the 21st, 2005. My wedding anniversary is 9/29. So September the 29th is my wedding anniversary. So then I'm thinking, this is crazy that in this month, the same month of not just only 9/11, because I got married in 2001 and it was 9/11, I lose my kid in 9/20, and at the end of the month is my anniversary. So for me, I was just like, this is crazy, because how in the world am I even going to feel by the time the end of the month? I couldn't even get past the second day. I was struggling trying to even make sense of any of this stuff. So it got to the point where we had to do funeral arrangements for a funeral. So that meant once I got out of the hospital in 4 days, a day or so after that, I have to go to a funeral. And that was insane. That was crazy. So I think literally I left in 4 days, and I believe either the next day or the very next day, I believe it was a funeral. This was crazy. In my mind, I just could not wrap my mind around going to a funeral home for my kid and talking about a casket and burial and arrangements, a tombstone. Just none of that stuff was making sense to me. And to be honest, I didn't even have the energy to even do any of that, on top of the fact I had stitches and all that kind of stuff from the C-section. So I said to my husband at that time, I can't go to no funeral home. And actually, I really couldn't go, but I guess somehow they could have had me on the phone or something, because I was still in the hospital. So he said, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. This guy, I'm talking about my husband, I can't even imagine where he pulls some of his strength from sometimes, because that was crazy. That was like crazy. Like, you have to go and talk to these people. And I just had to, I couldn't do it. I could not go to the funeral. I couldn't. It's nothing in me was making me able to actually go and do that and pick out no outfit. And there's no way I could have done that. I just couldn't. Maybe if I was by myself and I didn't have no other choice, but I'm not even a person who like leans on people in that type of way, but I just couldn't do it. I mean, after literally having a kid, seeing a kid, it was just so overwhelming. I couldn't. And he said, you know what? So him and our parents, they went and they, took care of everything. Thank God. And he came back. And so since it was September in the fall, we are not big sports fans, but of course we live in South Jersey, so we love the Eagles. And that was our plan. We said, look, as soon as the baby is born, when we come home, because we have a son, we are going to watch the game, you know, on those whatever time in the month that a game comes on, we're going to watch the game with him. So we had bought like Eagles outfits and all that, because that's how ready we were for him to come. And we had the little onesie Eagles with the hat, everything, little booties, everything all laid out for him. And so my husband decided to, that's what they buried him in. So the funeral was, actually we did the funeral because it was like short notice. We didn't want to prolong it and wait and make no bigger thing out of it than it was. So we had the funeral right at the burial grounds where he was at, which is like not far from our house. Then we had to decide, like, you wouldn't think it was so much decisions, like, where do you want to bury him at? What funeral home do you want to go to? Like, do you want a tombstone? Do you not want a tombstone? Like, what kind? And so, mind you, he's a baby, so the casket is literally like this big, like a length of a car seat, maybe. Even if it's not even that big, because you figure when a kid is born, it's like 7 pounds, or so. It's like literally the size of I can't even think of something that's that small, like maybe like a little bit bigger than a shoebox, you know. So it was crazy for that. So fast forward on to the funeral day. We come to the funeral day, you know, you so nervous because you don't know what to expect. I mean, I have never even been to a kid's funeral, like, none less a baby. Like, I never even been to a person that young funeral. I mean, I had lost people in my life at that point. I had lost my grandmama, I had lost my dad. And although it's sad, it was still different because this was my child. And of course, like anybody else, nobody never thinks that you're going to have to bury your kid. You never think of that. Like, that's just something I never thought of. Like, so to me, I feel like that made it even more shocking, because the thought of it is just so sad. So for years, I was so sad about it. Like, I couldn't even be angry. Anger didn't come until years and years and years later. I just couldn't feel nothing else but sadness for a long time. Like, that's what I felt was, you know, just so sad. So life, of course, has to go on at this point. And the whole time of my recovery, my husband stayed with me. So just like when you have a kid, you have that maternity time. I still had that time, but at the end of the time, once I was healed, I could choose if I wanted to stay longer. And it wasn't the way it is now, where now you get more time because I had kids after that. But at the time, I just did my 8 weeks or whatever it was. It headed back to work. So once I got home from the hospital, literally was most days of just crying. Because I had a C-section, they gave me prescription medication to take. So I was like on medication. I mean, to be honest, I feel like that helped some of the days, because it's like you only can sleep for so much. And the pain medicine, it just helped me rest in some way, you know, because I was still in, you know, healing. So on my anniversary, my husband decided, look, we should go away, go to Poconos in Pennsylvania, and just get away and kind of like just let it just be us, and just maybe just try to, I don't know, get on with life normally, or just not ignore our anniversary, because I mean, we were like 4 or 5 years into our marriage, I didn't want to not acknowledge my wedding. Like, I love my husband. Like, that's my best friend. So we decided to go. And if anybody knows about Poconos, it's like really like a place, a romantic place that people go to. People usually go a lot of times on Valentine's Day. It has like a heart-shaped pool and all that kind of stuff. And a little wine glass, jacuzzi little tub thing in the room, and heart-shaped bed. It's really like a lover's cove kind of thing. And it was nice. I tried to enjoy myself as much as I could. I mean, had a fireplace. It was just, and it's fall time. So if you know like about Pennsylvania, like it was like you could see the deers all coming around, and I just tried my best to I just tried my best to, you know, move forward. But for me, the hardest part, so once I came back from the hospital, I didn't go outside. So for however many days from the time I came from the hospital, which it was like a week or so maybe, until my anniversary, I was in the house. I really had no reason to go out, and I didn't want to go outside. And I walk outside, and my husband was like, I'll be right back. I got to go in the house, because I said, look, I want to go straight out and get straight into the car, because, you know, I really don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to see nobody, because people in the neighborhood knew that I lived in an apartment complex. People knew that I was pregnant. So I get all the way downstairs, and I just felt this, I mean, it was just like a big, strong feeling of anxiety. Like I'm like nervous, like standing at the door, like, oh my God, I gotta go out this door. Like, I just don't even want to go out there, because I just don't want nobody to see me. So at first I kind of like peeked out the door. I didn't see nobody. So I was like, I'm gonna hurry up and try to get to the car as fast as I can. And, you know, so I don't have to talk to nobody. So right when it's time for me to go out the door, I was like, oh, I forgot something. I'm gonna shoot back upstairs real quick, and I'm coming straight out. I said, okay, I'm gonna go dash straight for the car now, because there's nobody outside. I rush out, get all the way down to the sidewalk, literally touching the car, about to get, you know, walk to the door. And one of my neighbors just like hollers from down the street and said, hey, how you doing? I know it got to be close to time for you to have the baby. So when you having a baby again? And in that moment, I'm standing there like, what in the world am I about to say? And tell this guy, he's up there asking me about, you know, the pregnancy, my pregnancy or what have you. And I'm like, I lost the baby. And he's like, huh? Now, mind you, we're yelling down the street. I'm like, I lost the baby. And I felt bad, because I was like, you know, you just like dump something that don't like that on somebody. They looking at you like, I am so sorry. I would have never said anything. Like, nobody's thinking, oh, knock on all the neighbors' doors and let them know that you lost your kid so they don't ask you. You know, that's not normal. But it was inevitable. I felt like, I felt that it was going to happen. And it did. So that was the one thing that plagued me all the time for years, because for years and years, it was true what she said. It could be years later and somebody asked you about that pregnancy. I was in a market one day, and somebody said, wasn't you pregnant? How's the baby? And I'm like, once again, stuck with it, don't know what to say, but it's the only thing that you can say is that I lost the baby. I lost the baby. Oh, I'm so sorry. I wish it never happened. I'm so sorry that happened. I wish I'd have never said anything. I didn't know. Blase, blase, right? So for after, you know, some time, you know, we decided, oh, maybe we should go to the grief parent group. And we tried to go to a grief parent group. It was one of the saddest places I have ever been. Like, literally, you come, is tissues on the table. And in my mind, like that was just like stuck in my mind, like it's tissues on the table. So I already know that you're going to be sitting here crying. And I'm like, goodness, like the last thing I want to do is sit here and cry for like a whole hour with a bunch of strangers that I don't know. I said, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway because maybe this will help, you know? Because like I said, I was really, really sad. So I was just really sad. I felt like with my husband, he felt more angry. I didn't understand it at the time because I just was so sad. Like I couldn't get even to anger because I was just so disappointed and so hurt and so sad until I couldn't even feel anger at that time. So we go, and everybody goes around and tells their story, how old their kid was when they lost it, basically what caused the death or whatever. And it was the saddest stories I probably ever heard. It almost made me feel like I don't know. It was weird. It was like, should I be sad when you have a person who had a kid that died from a disease and they had the kid for 9 months and then the kid passes away? Should I feel sad because it's somebody who had twins and lost 2 kids? You know, I wasn't in a position where I couldn't have no more kids. So kind of going back to what actually really happened that caused it. So in my particular case, my son, the umbilical cord got wrapped around his neck and got into a knot and it got tangled, and that caused the breathing to stop. So the doctor basically explained to me it wasn't like the kid was strangled or was like suffocated. It wasn't kind of like that. It was kind of like the valve was just like closed, so it kind of cut off the airway and like that. So that's basically how it happened. It wasn't nothing that caused it. Nothing caused that to happen in that way. It's just something that happened. There's no way they could have seen it in advance. It wasn't no way to predict that it would happen or would not happen. It is just a tragic thing because sometimes the umbilical cord grows long, and it just is. It's nothing you done or anything like that, because you do feel that too. Like I should have done something when I felt he wasn't moving that first day, or was it days before that I was feeling him slowing down and I wasn't realizing. It's not like they could have pinpointed when it actually happened. I just figured it happened that day before. So with knowing that helped a little bit, because it's like then you can't really be so upset with yourself because you had no control over it. The worst feeling is when you have to realize that some things are out of your control. There's nothing you can do. It is what it is, and you have to accept that. That's hard, because when you feel like I don't deserve this, why is this happening to me? It's so many people having kids and they don't even really want their children. People give kids away every day, and I planned for my kid. I really wanted my kid. Anybody around me knew at that time I had been wanting a kid for all the years of my marriage. Like we waited, we put everything in place. We made sure we was mentally ready, financially ready before we even decided. And when that time came, it wasn't so easy for me to get pregnant at first. So it took a while, took some time, and then when it finally happened, I lose my kid. So yeah, that was a lot to kind of like ingest. So over the years, it was just, when the day came, it just seemed like, okay, so after I lost the kid, my son, After I lost Logan, I had gallbladder, so I had to get my gallbladder removed. So I lost my kid, and I go back to work, don't take extra time, end up losing my job because my gallbladder went bad from the pregnancy. Believe it or not, I got pregnant 6 months later. So as time and months went by, I said to my husband, look, I'm starting to feel a strange feeling. At first it was, I definitely want to try. I want to try as soon as I can. As soon as I heal up and everything, I want to try right away. Then it went to, maybe I'll wait a little bit. Maybe it's a reason why. Maybe I should slow down and not rush and try to do it again. Then I got to the point where I don't want to try. I don't want to take the chance to see if this happens again. How did it happen again for the second time? Do I want to put myself through that? Do I really need to have a kid? Can I just be happy if I never have a kid? Even though I want a kid so bad, would I be happy if I don't have a kid? Then I just decided, look, it's now or never. If I don't do it now, I'm not doing it. We tried. I got pregnant with my sweet little pie, Aiden Lee. Which I felt like Logan was a perfect name. Me and my husband, we like Marvel comics, and Wolverine is our favorite character, and that's his name, so that's why we picked Logan. And his name is Logan Alexander. I since then had 2 more children. I had my Aiden Lee and my Adrian, and both of their middle name is Alexander, so we gave them the same middle name as Logan. So both of their middle names Alexander. And yeah, it was a experience I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, because it's very heartbreaking. For me, I feel like I was just totally heartbroken. Like, it's almost like when you think you're in love for the first time and you realize it wasn't really love, and you're so just broken. At the time, it seems really, really bad. It's like that, but worse. And in time, it gets worse and kind of never goes away. So it's kind of like a endless heartbreak that you never get past. So even with my other kids, sometimes that milestones that they have make me think about the kid that I don't have here. So going through my 2 other pregnancies, which meant now that I have to have a C-section, because now I'm older and I'm at high risk, which just made it even more stressful. For me, it kind of took away a lot of the happiness from the next pregnancies, because it was more about worrying. When I got to my last son, I was like, really like, oh my God, why would I even try again? But I didn't want my son to be here by himself without a sibling. So that was one of the reasons why we definitely made sure we had another kid. But I pressed through it. Thank God nothing happened. Well, nothing was wrong with either of my kids. They both are healthy, strong little guys, which are not little guys at this time. But Logan would have been, today, he would have been 17 years old. 16 years old. He turned 16 tomorrow. And you would think, like, in these years, like, this has been it's been a long 16 years trying to figure out how to navigate. And so in my mind, I'm like a thinker, so I try to think in advance. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, how can I prepare myself for that time? And it can be the strangest things. Like, you know how when fall time comes and you just have the smell of the fall, like it's like I don't know how to describe it, but you get sometimes like a smell. I don't know if it's like the trees or what it is, but you can tell it it's not summertime. It's like that changing of the season. You could feel it in the air and that kind of stuff like that. It could be that would like trigger. Since I lost them, every single time I see 11 so 11 started, I started seeing it almost every single night. 11. It's been that way for 16 straight years. If I ever saw 11 before, I never paid attention, never noticed it. And it has always made me feel like, I feel like that was a time when he truly like passed away. It was around that time, between 11-12 o'clock hour. So when you have so many unanswered questions of why, or does this mean something, and then it's just the crazy things that it's just regular life that comes up. Well, you know the birthday is going to come, and then when my anniversary comes, I know that's coming, but even though that's afterwards, it's hard to not think of the two together. And when people talk about 9/11, because that's in the same month. So when I get to 9/11, I know I'm days only away from the anniversary of my son's death. Then it's the cemetery. In the beginning, I went all the time. And then one day I just couldn't go no more. And then one day I could go back again. It's like it fluctuates. It's nothing concrete. It's not like it's something where if you do something long enough, it'll eventually go away. It's like not even that type of thing. It's like for every time milestones or things happen in my life, it takes me to who's not here. So sometimes even like with my dad, if there's certain things, you know, that happens in my life, I'm like, oh, I wish he could have been here for that. It makes me think about my kid too. Also around that time, I started to see a red bird. And in my life, I'm sure I probably saw a red bird, but I never remember seeing it as frequently as I do. I don't see it all the time now, but usually when something good is happening in my life or something is about to come to me, good, I'll see a red bird. And I feel just like that's him. And sometimes even other loved ones that's just around me, you know, in protecting you and you know, keeping you safe, whatever like that. And so yeah, it is a very unique state of mind that you have to be in each time you know that it's coming. So for me, it's in the summer, coming into September, I just want to like stay in the house. So I go through like a phase where I'm just kind of like don't really want to go out, trying to stay in and just kind of be to myself, because you don't want to, I try to be kind to others. If I know that I'm not in a good mood, that's just my way. If I'm not feeling in the best of moods, I will go by myself. I'm not a person who's going to spoil everybody else's fun or everybody else's happy time with whatever's happening with me. You know, I'm not like an attention-seeking kind of person where I'm looking for attention, nor am I the person who definitely doesn't want to be pitied or, you know, want you to feel sorry for me. That's like a bad feeling for me. So I usually kind of like trying to go and be by myself, and you know, when I'm not feeling so good. So in time, I said, okay, I'm going to just go ahead and move forward in my life. Once I had my son, I thought that would be the cure, but it was not. I love my son to death. I love all my children. But I thought that would be a cure. When I had the second kid, no. Because each kid is each kid, and before you have kids, you don't always see it that way. So I'm thinking like maybe once I have a kid, it will take away some of the heartache, but it doesn't, because Logan is Logan, Aiden is Aiden, Adrian is Adrian. They're 3 different people in my life, so it's no way that a person can replace a person. Although people will oftentimes tell you that when you're grieving, well, at least you can have a kid, another kid, and you'll be fine. Once you have a baby, you'll get past it. No, you don't. I don't know why people say that. I guess in hopes of, and hoping is like, what else do you say to a person who lost their kid? After a while, people don't want to hear about it no more. It's old. It's like just any kind of news that you hear. Once it's happened, it's over, and it's kind of like people's moving on. And sometimes it gives you the pressure that you have to move on, or just be quiet about it, because nobody wants to keep hearing about a sad story about how you lost your kid and how you're still sad, and it's months and years later. So that oftentimes make you go inward. You don't want to talk about it. I try very hard to acknowledge my husband hurt, because a lot of times being a mother, you feel like the father is not as sad as you because he didn't carry the kid, which that is so untrue. It does forever change you. The way you see things and see people. I didn't focus so much on other people as much as how I actually felt. But one thing that did kind of bother me was if I thought people, if they focused too much on how sad it might have been. One of my most embarrassing things I feel is to cry out loud in front of everybody. Like, when you cry, you make the sound. Like, that is like so embarrassing to me. That's something that I feel like is private. I feel like crying is personal, private. It shouldn't be done in front of everyone. I don't like to cry in front of people, so that is something that made me nervous too. Like, how about if I'm somewhere and you get that knot in your throat and you gotta find a way to hurry up and get to the bathroom, what have you. That happened a couple of times. A lot of times because over time I started to suppress it and kind of not talk about it. The less I talk about it, it felt like it was feeling better. But it will mostly just end up to an explosion of emotion somewhere, and that was crazy. I could be just driving on a road and hear a song, and boom, I'm crying. I gotta pull myself together. I hate when that happened when I was at work, because that was crazy. Thing that, you're at work and people, and then you got to explain to people why you crying, why you upset. So I tried to avoid that as much as I could, but it's really no way to. It's really no way. Somebody's gonna always ask about your kid. Somebody's always gonna say something to you. So the first year, probably the hardest, because I lost my kid in September. So when Mother's Day comes the following year, I'm at Target looking for Mother's Day gifts. And a lady says to me, "Happy Mother's Day." It caught me so off guard. Because if somebody may have said Happy Mother's Day to me before, I never noticed and probably didn't pay no attention to it. But this particular time, you say Happy Mother's Day, I'm shocked, like looking, oh, what do I do? I like feel all like clammed up. I'm like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, thank you, and try to move on. So then another lady walks up and said, why would you say Happy Mother's Day to her? You don't know she a mom. And I'm thinking in my mind, oh my goodness, we're not gonna go on and on about this. Let's just leave it. So I'm kind of like trying to walk away. And she was like, how you know she was a mom? And as I'm walking away, because I'm like, I'm gonna just walk away. I'm not about to explain this story again for the 1000th time. And as I'm walking away, the lady says to the lady, she's like, you can just tell when somebody's a mom. And I'm just thinking to myself, God, please let me get out of this door before I just break down and cry. Like, please let me just make it to my car and make it out of this door. So I kind of like just left everything and walked out of the store. So I'm like, oh, I'm not about to do this on Mother's Day. Prior to that, I wasn't even thinking of it in that way. I was focused on trying to get stuff for my mom's, like, so I wasn't even thinking like Mother's Day for myself, especially since I didn't have my kid anyway. So again, it's like those times like that would just come upon you, shock you, and you're like, oh my God, I'm back in this fucking slump again, feeling sad, just broken down. Just when I think I'm getting out of it and I'm pulling myself out of it, it's like I'm starting back over from scratch. It's almost like ripping off a scab and just starting fresh. Ripping your stitches out and just let the shit start from the beginning. And that's how I felt a lot of times. So a particular year, I'm feeling that the time is coming. I'm gonna just work. I'm at work. I got a lot of stuff. It was a busy time in this work season at the time. So I was just trying to get my work done. So at the time I was a manager at a job and I had a staff meeting. And for whatever reason, I went through this entire day. Now, prior to that, every 20th of the month, it triggered. Every time I saw 9, 20, it triggered. Everything freaking triggered this in the beginning. Like, anything surrounding it, fall time, everything. Like, it's almost like everything in that time was almost ruined by that, Like, so I'm at work. I don't even realize what date it is. I literally, in my mind, had so much stuff in my mind I had forgot. So I'm in the middle of a staff meeting, and everybody's like signing this paper for the like the agenda, signing in at the meeting, who attended. And I go to sign my name, and I look and I see 9/20, and I couldn't even get a hold of myself. I broke down in front of everybody. I literally had to walk out of the room and like go in the bathroom and get myself together. I barely even made it through the meeting. It was just so crazy. I shocked myself. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot I let this happen. I should have never even came to work. So from that day forward, I never went to work on that day again. I always would take off, call out, whatever I had to do, because I'm like, there's no way I'm going to try to even make it through the day. Some of the years, which it was 16 of them, some of the years, I would get to almost the end of the night and be fine. And then I would just break down about it. So yeah, it's a long journey that never ends, seem like. And it was probably well into years to one day I was just decided that I was just so mad about it. I just started to feel anger. Like, I was just angry about it. Like, why this, why that, why my kid, why, period. It was just anger. I was just angry about it. I never was particularly angry with God, but I just was angry about why. Why don't I know? Why did it even happen? Why I didn't know that it happened. It was just, it was just, I was just angry about it. And that kind of stuck around for a good while. Until one day, I will always say to my husband, I just don't understand it. I don't understand. I just don't understand. And he was like, but you do understand. You do understand what happened. Like, you clearly understand what happens. You're just choosing not to accept it. And at first, that made me upset. Because I'm like, well, how can you not accept it when you know, and we had a funeral and all this kind of stuff. How did you know that there's no way that you can't accept something? But you can. You can really not accept it. Even though you know and you see it and it's there, acceptance is very, very hard a lot of times it don't matter what it is. If you can't accept things how they are, you are going to be stuck. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was so stuck in a space where I felt like I just couldn't move past this. This was like the first time in my life I had something that I couldn't go past it. You know, it was like, and I don't know if I couldn't move past it because I felt like I was so robbed of the time with him. I didn't even have a day, or just the fact that he wasn't here altogether. But either way, that's what I felt. I felt like I was robbed. I felt like I truly feel like the one thing that I asked for was taken away. And it took a while to deal with that. It took me a long time until this one particular day. It was just like, it was just like a light bulb. It was like, it just clicked. Like, you have to accept it. You have to really bury it, not to forget, because that's another issue that you struggle with. I don't want to forget it, because I don't want to forget it. Well, how can you forget your kid? And I struggle with, I want to make sure I acknowledge him, and I want to make sure that I don't forget. But at some point, you do want to forget, because you just want a fucking break from it. Like, you just want to not feel sad every single September. You don't want to dread the day. But there's no way you can reverse time or life. So you have to deal with it every time, over and over again, like a freaking hamster wheel. Like, it's like Groundhog's Day. Just going to keep repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. And you got to think about all this stuff. And so before I left the hospital, they gave me the pictures, because I asked for the pictures to have. It took years before I could even look at them. I rarely look at the pictures still now. They gave me everything. They gave me all the clothes that he had. So on the way from leaving the hospital, they actually gave me a teddy bear, because it was a lady who lost her kid, and they said that that's really sad when it's time for the mom to leave the hospital. She has to leave the hospital without a baby. So what they would do is, for all the mothers who lost a kid, they would give them a teddy bear for them to take on their way out of the hospital. Also, they put a card on your door, which you really don't even really notice until the end, but they put a card on your door, a bereavement card, so everybody that comes into the room, like the people that that clean your room, or any doctors and stuff, when they're coming into the room, they know that you lost a kid. Because although I lost my kid, I still ended up on a labor and delivery floor, because I still had labor. So throughout the night, you would hear the kids crying, and it took me like a day or so to realize, you're it's babies on this floor. You're not going crazy. So that was a relief for me, because I really thought I was losing it. Like, I thought I was going crazy, because it would seem like I will only hear like a baby cry like at a certain time of the night, but I did. It was probably when the baby was waking up to get fed. But in my mind, I wasn't even thinking that far. Yeah, so I'm not gonna go on and on, but it took time, and death is horrific. It is a horrific thing. It's hard to get past it a lot of times. And I totally understand when you see people who just can't get past it, because it really is hard. It's hard just to forget. And lack of a better word, it's hard to just forget and just move on. Nothing changes. Nothing fills that space. That hole is forever there, and nothing can fill it. It's just a hole. So, that being said, I hope that maybe this gives comfort to somebody. Because I know a lot of times I felt like I was by myself, and the truth of the matter is, you're not. It's plenty of moms out here. It's plenty of people. From my experience, when I did open up, I found, or in some ways people found me. All the days I was in a hospital, almost every woman who lost a kid shared their story with me while I was there. And I feel like that helped on the days too, because, like when my husband had to leave, somebody come in, they'll tell me, I lost a kid. I'm so sorry. I know what it feels like. It's going to get better eventually in time. And it did get better in some ways. But a loss is just that. When you lose somebody, there's no coming back. So there's no way you can, really change it in any type of way. But if you have somebody that you can trust and talk to, I feel like that's the best thing. And it don't matter who it is. It could be somebody at your job. Sometimes people who are in or close to you are sometimes good people to talk to. Clearly, if you need to go to somebody professionally, I say go, because everything, your mental health is extremely important. So if you feel like you are struggling and you just can't get past it, I would strongly suggest go to the nearest professional you can get to and talk to somebody. Because it is hard. It's not easy to lose a kid. So, Logan forever stays in my heart. When I can, I look through his box, which I haven't done in a long time. I can go to the grave. The strangest thing is, you would never think something like, I'm going to have to change his tombstone. Just recently, we just had to put a new tombstone down because his one that he had started to sink in the ground because it was a flat one. And so we had to get a new one. So, of course, it's like, again, in life, you just never know how you have to embrace the same situation over and over again, or how you have to just learn how to accept the things that you can't change. So, it's September 20th, 2021. Logan Alexander Mims would have been 16 years old. And who knows how he would have looked, or, well, I did see how he looked, but who knows how he would look now. And but that's something I had to come to grips with. I'll never know. I'll never see him graduate. I'll never see him take his first steps. I'll never hear his voice. I'll never see him grow, get married. And unfortunately, I saw him pass away. And that's pretty much all I have. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed my story, or at least found it helpful. If not, it's just something I feel like I need to do for myself, because sometimes just getting the words out is hard. So that was my goal, is to be able to speak about it with love and acceptance. That being said, bye.